So when it comes to big lap planning, everybody talks about the food, the fuel, the campsites when it comes to budgeting, but nobody really talks about the stuff that is definitely sneaky, hidden costs, I guess you could probably say, and the ones that can easily blow out your budget in no time. So in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the three big things that seem really obvious, but if you're not used to budgeting, then we'll talk through those, and also the ones that catch a lot of families out. So my name's Margie, and I have done numerous trips around Australia with my family, and I would like to give you some advice on how to best prepare for your amazing adventure away. So let's get stuck straight into it. Number one, let's talk about these big three items. They seem really, really obvious, but until you actually stop to consider them, it can seem a budget can go, wow, there's just so much to deal with. Alrighty, so fuel. Let's start with fuel, because fuel it's expensive and it's gone up and it's pretty crazy. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. However, if it comes to your budget and you need to work out a way to lower your budget, fuel is one that you can do it, because do you really have to go to that destination over, on the other side of Australia? Or is it better that you can just do some smaller, shorter lengths of driving? So you're still being able to get away and everything, but your budget isn't blowing out crazy by fuel. So just have a bit of a consider about that. But fuel is absolutely a big expense. Secondly, accommodation. Now that might seem a bit strange due to the fact that you've just gone out and bought a caravan, or you bought it ages ago, and you know what I mean? It's accommodation when you're going on a caravan holiday does seem a bit bizarre, but caravan parks, if you're not aware of how caravan parks work, they can be really, really expensive. And if you do subscribe to my channel, welcome, but also have a look through some of my other videos, because I've got a few bits and pieces on caravans and caravan parks and how you can keep costs down on that. But basically, caravan parks, you need to know, are you going to be spending a week at a time in a caravan park? Are you going to be spending a couple of days? Do you want to stay at the ones like the big four fancy caravan parks? Or are you happy to stay at like the little mum and dad type run one out of town and the non-touristy popular hotspots? That all adds up massively to your overall budget. And it doesn't really matter whichever way you decide, as long as you know which way you're going to decide and you can budget accordingly for it. Then the third one is food. I don't know, me personally, I figure, well, when I'm at home, I have to go out and buy food anyway. So it doesn't really make much of a difference to our overall budget, because it's not something we have to factor in on top of every daily living expense. However, food in the middle of nowhere can get expensive. Also, if you're like our family, we have a few very picky eaters, and they're very particular with the brands, which means when you're in the middle of nowhere, those brands are typically the ones that are a lot more expensive than other brands. And if you've got a picky eater in your family, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't, that's awesome also. And you can buy what's in season, and that certainly really, really helps too. That's what Tim and I do. But when it comes to kids, you just got to get some sort of food into them. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So you've got food, you've got fuel, and you've got accommodation. They're your big three ticket items that, well, easily worked out because they're quite obvious when you stop to think about them. However, here's where it gets a bit interesting. And these are these sneaky little costs. Now, before I jump into these, I just want to tell you guys a little bit of a story. So Tim and I, on our last big trip, we went up to Western Australia, and it was great. The kids were a bit older, which meant they were a bit more, they like to explore a little bit more, which meant they ended up in the mud a lot more. And so basically we spent a lot of time at Laundromats, and maybe it's just me, but I did not realize how expensive Laundromats were, especially when you got kids and their clothes, and you can't like put lots of stuff in the machines. And then you got to put it in the dryer, because you never have any time just to sit and wait. I don't know. You got kids and you got to chase after them. You got to get your clothes washed as quick as possible. So to put clothes in a dryer is all well and good, and you put your $2 and your $4 in, and that doesn't seem too bad. But then your clothes, they're still damp at the end of their cycle, because they're just, I don't know. A lot of the laundromats we went to, they didn't really it didn't really work as well as I would have expected them to work. I don't know what I was expecting, but anyway. And then your next $2 and $4 goes in, and then your next $2 and $4, and before you know it, you spent $50 at Laundromat. And I didn't account for that one. Like I had no idea about Laundromat. So there you go. Anyway, that was a little story about ourselves. So yep. Anyway, but there, if you go when you go to a caravan park, get your washing done then, because you can put it on the clothesline and it can actually dry naturally. I don't know. I think it's a lot better. But anyway, when you're in a rush, caravan park or laundromats, they certainly do work. They're just expensive. There you go. Didn't know. Anyway, I guess I could probably put that into one of these hidden costs, but that's just something that we learnt there on our last trip around Australia. Alrighty, now let's get stuck into this list I've got of these forgotten ones. And so, caravan maintenance. So, caravans, look, stuff goes wrong with them, especially when you're living in them full time. You're going to find little niggly problems, which isn't too much of an issue, except for the fact that if you have to get a part and a part sent to you, that can be quite costly. And especially if you then have to divert somewhere and then you've got extra accommodation, one little part can then snowball into a fairly hefty bill at the end of it. So you need to have some sort of a backup money, or just be aware that you will have to spend money on caravan maintenance. Car maintenance seems a little bit more obvious because it's something mechanical and most people sort of know that you have to get your car maintained. But don't forget about your caravan too. Little things like preventative maintenance and like some hoses, just little bits and pieces. Filters are a really good one, but just you will need to maintain your van. So budget for that one accordingly. The other sneaky hidden costs that a lot of families don't budget for are your back home costs. Just because you're going on a holiday doesn't mean you can have a holiday from your bills for your back home life. And what I mean by that is if you've rented out your house, or you have a house but you've just locked it up, anything like that, you're still going to have your rates and taxes, your insurance, all that sort of stuff there too. So don't forget to factor in your back home costs. If you have sold your house, you still might have particular costs like your health insurance and your Medicare levy, or whatever the case may be. You'll probably have costs associated with just typical day-to-day living. So don't forget about that one. The other one too is phone and internet. Phone, myself and Tim, I have a Telstra, Tim has Optus. We've decided to do that just so then we can maybe get the best coverage possible. Where you have found it's a bit hit and miss, and Tim will have coverage, I won't, and vice versa many times. So we just decided to do it that way. We also do have Starlink. When you're traveling, Starlink is crazy expensive, but we would not be able to travel without it, due to the fact that we work on the road and also we homeschool our kids. It's also just a nice peace of mind. We've got that connectivity. So, but it's expensive and you've got a budget for it. And it's way more than your $80 standard NBN plan when you're back home. So just heads up on that one. The other one too are your experiences. Now, you can go around all of Australia and not spend anything on experiences if you choose. And we have done so much of that. Some beautiful beaches you can go to, some walks you can do. There's a lot of community run-ins that you can go to that are all free. However, if you do decide that you're in a particular location and you want to then go to do a specific experience, they can be really costly. So make sure you put them into your budget. And what I'm talking about is a swim with a whale shark, or that one-off hot air balloon flight, or some amazing boat ride, or whatever the case is, something that you wouldn't do in your normal everyday life. So just be aware and just budget for it. And I guess where I'm going with all of this is just awareness of it. So if you want to go and live extravagantly on the road, that's no problems. But just make sure you've itemized all these little sneaky costs. And I'm going to tell you just one more sneaky cost that catches a lot of families out, and we're not immune to this also, and that is your sneaky ice cream stop. So if you've got kids, you know what I'm talking about. If you stop at a servo, anything like that on the road, and you just buy that one ice cream. Now that one ice cream might end up being one for all your family members, which then all of a sudden that's $30 on ice cream, which also might mean that you might want to just grab a quick drink and a quick packet of chips, and all of a sudden spend $50 at the servo. If you're on the road day after day and you just stop for another ice cream down there. There's $100, $200 easily. So just be aware and mindful of what you're spending. Again, all good if you budgeted for it. If you haven't budgeted for it, this is where you're going to run into a lot of trouble. If you do want any help with this one, I do have a spreadsheet that I have designed that I use. I'll put a link in the description below. So once you know what to budget for, the next question then becomes, how do you save up for it without just like living a miserable life for 3 or 4 years to save up your trip? If you would like to have some tips on how to budget up for your big trip, then watch this video here. I'll see you on that one.